Here are the books I read in May.
Turning pages, keep turning those pages. Time flies when you've been reading.
The first book I read in May was My Lady Jade by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows, and I loved this book so much. It was adorable, hilarious, and had so many cute romances. And why is the sun going down? The only thing I wondered was why they decided to make this a historical fiction at all. It is based on Lady Jane Grey and King Edward, except some people could turn into animals. And that was kind of the reason for all of the wars and things. Instead of it being about the different religions that they wanted to exterminate, they wanted to get rid of the people that could turn into animals. But this fact alone changed so many things about, history that I wondered, why not just create a fantasy world in which there were people who could turn into animals? Like, why did you even need historical figures at all? The only thing is, I think that the historical figures turning into animals was supposed to be funny, which it was, but it was actually the writing itself that was funny. Like, the fact that this historical person actually could turn into this animal didn't really make me laugh just as much as the fact that the writing was really good and the writing was really clever. But anyway, I still just really loved this book. It was exactly what I needed after reading all of those slow books during the Magical Readathon, if you happen to have watched those videos. The next book I read is We Are The Wildcats by Siobhan Vivian. And this is about a group of girls on the field hockey team. Well, it's 24 hours before the big game, and there's a sleepover the night before the big game, and it ends up turning into one of those crazy nights of different things happening scenario, and then you also get flashbacks into what different girls' lives and things that happened that led up to the previous big game at the end of the last season and why they lost. But it also talks a lot about the coach and how he is the main inspiration for why the girls are as successful a team as they are. But then the more the book goes on, you start to wonder about the coach himself. I wondered about him from the beginning, but everyone was like praising him like he was a god, and I was like, this gotta be something weird about this guy, because first of all, I didn't like the way he treated them. He was very intense with them, way more intense than I feel like. It just seemed weird to me from the very beginning. And I actually have some notes as I was reading this book. So, the first one was, okay, Coach is starting to really irritate me. First, he seems really creepy and possessive of Mel, and kind of emotionally abusive to her, which is true. And then later on in the book, he's being all weird and texting Lucy and flirting with her, and then I have in all caps, ew. Hopefully he gets called out at the end, otherwise this book is just super weird. It's already a little weird. Oh, and then they're trying to defend the fact that the coach, yells at them and is borderline emotionally abusive. Actually, I think he is emotionally abusive. I would not be able to handle that sort of coaching, in sports. I feel like the way the coach talks to the players, he literally swears at them. It's not okay. Tough love, and saying that helping them be better by yelling at them and making them feel worthless. A terrible person and a jerk. It's not okay. The ending of the book was good. I did enjoy the ending. Without spoiling anything, I'll just say I thought the book was headed in this one direction that was making me very uncomfortable, and then it ended the way that I wanted it to, which is all I'm going to say. And if you read the book, I think you'll understand where I'm coming from. If you haven't, you could read it to find out, but I can't really say any more than that, and you can probably gather from what I've already said. I hope that didn't spoil everything. Though I do actually wish the ending had gone further than it did, because certain characters deserved more to happen to them based on their decisions than what happened. It should have been more. Is all I can say without spoiling the entire book based off of the concept. So yes, I did enjoy this. At times I was a little bored. I honestly feel like this would have made a better TV show, because then we could have each episode, and each episode could focus on flashbacks of the different girls, and we could actually get to know them and their families, As it was in the beginning, we were thrown a whole lot of characters at once, and I actually had trouble keeping some of them straight, and I had to keep going back and forth being like, who is who? And that would be a lot easier in a TV show when we could actually see the characters. But it was decent. I wouldn't say it's my favorite book, but I read it fairly fast and was interested to see what happened. By the time I was getting kind of bored with it, as tends to happen with me in books, I was already nearly done with it, so I thought I may as well see how it played out. Plus it was the Booksplosion Book of the Month, and I honestly, was only reading it because I wanted to watch the live show discussion, which as of the time I'm filming this, I haven't seen go up, so I'm hoping they are having the discussion. It was pushed back a week. Anyway, that's literally the reason I read this book, was so I could watch that live show. Even if I don't watch it when it's live, it's still fun to go back and watch them after the fact, because it's not like I really comment anyway. The next book I read was Song of the Wanderer by Bruce Coville, one of my childhood favorites, unicorns, the sequel to Into the Land of the Unicorns, and I still love this book. The Griffin is my favorite part. He is ridiculous, and I just love him so much. I do remember being obsessed with the Griffin and just thinking he was the best thing ever, which he kind of is, because he's like a wimp, but brave at the same time, which is just, he's adorable. He's very silly, which is why I like him. He's a nice contrast to the rest of the cast, which is all very serious. I actually remember the big epic quest being a lot more eventful, but I think that was just because it was probably one of the first epic fantasies I'd ever read as a child. I read The Magic Tree House, but that was more, it wasn't like a huge quest because they were really short books, so all of the events happened kind of quickly and then were over, whereas this was longer, and for me this was pretty long as a kid, and it was like grand spanning. This was basically my Lord of the Rings. There were only actually like 2 big action scenes in this book, and the rest of it was more describing the magical landscape and the different places that they traveled, which was good. Like, the descriptions, everything, they were well written and interesting. It's just, I remember it being like so much longer and so much grander, and it's what introduced me to epic fantasy, and it's what started my obsession, I think. I can't think of anything else that would have. But the ending dropped so many bombs that I was like shocked. I remember why I was so excited to read the next book in the series, and then it just never came out. And it's out now, so I can finally read it. Hopefully, if my library ever opens again, I can find out what happens. Because this book was so good. The ending was just insane. I'm actually going to turn my fan on because I'm starting to sweat. So hopefully it's not too loud. Alright, I moved it over here so it's not as close. Because I know my camera already has a little bit of background noise to it, so hopefully this isn't too much worse. Next book was Slayer by Kirsten White. This book I've mentioned many times in I think all of my previous TBRs because it is set in the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is difficult for me to say. So, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. I'm pretty obsessed. Every 2 or 3 years I have to rewatch the entire 7-season series. I've probably memorized way too many lines of that show. And Buffy, well, she's one of my all-time favorite characters. Is she perfect? No. She's a flawed human being. But she tries her darn hardest, and I love that Vampire Slayer with all of my heart. And this girl, this protagonist, hates Buffy and is constantly complaining about how Buffy messes everything up. Excuse you, she's saved the world many times. Have you? No. I didn't think so. The protagonist never had to make the choices that Buffy has. Anyway, it's difficult for me to read because the rage just keeps coming whenever she complains about Buffy, which is often. So I'm like trying to push back past it, and I'm kind of getting into the story again, and then she says something rude about Buffy and I'm just like, maybe it's supposed to be funny, but I'm not laughing. This book is also not particularly entertaining. It has zero of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show charm, which is why I like the show. And I can't stand the main character for the above mentioned reasons. So I made it about to page 130, and then I just kept getting angry. So I decided to read what I thought was going to be a nice romance to calm me down, and we'll get into the next book. Oh, but first, I also tried reading And I Darken by Kirsten White, and I had the same problem not connecting to the characters. None of them are particularly interesting to me, which is the exact problem that I had with And I Darken. Also, And I Darken, like, nothing happened. But this one, stuff was happening, but I still don't really care. I don't really like the characters. The world's not particularly interesting, even though it is the Buffy world. It's just, what I liked about the show was, like, the charm and the writing. It wasn't necessarily that there were vampires and stuff. Oh, and the characters, obviously. Yeah, so back to that romance, the cute, sweet love story that I thought I was going to read. I picked up, and you're gonna laugh if you've read this book, that I thought it was going to be a nice, sweet romance. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. As I said, this book was supposed to be a fun romance to distract me from the rage that Slayer was causing, but it was actually a heartbreaking emotional roller coaster. Nowhere on the back does it mention domestic abuse. At the beginning, it started out so not exactly cute. Maybe more like fun and flirty, but a little deeper than that, because they had like an intense emotional connection. I don't know. It started out really gripping. The romance was really good until it went bad. And that's when the heartbreaking part happened. Anyway, it was a really good book. I did read it in one sitting, but it was definitely more intense than I bargained for. I do see why people find her books addicting, because I immediately wanted to pick up another of her books, which leads me to my next read, Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. I'd found both of these books at the thrift store a while ago, and I had never picked them up, so I'm glad I finally read them. And this one was really cute. I really liked it, especially the beginning was just super adorable. And I found out there's a soundtrack to this book, and it's on YouTube, and that's amazing because it's about two people who are songwriters. And I always feel like when there's songwriting or like any sort of singing or dancing in books, I just want to hear the music, I want to see the dancing. I generally feel like music and dancing is something that just works better in TV rather than in a novel. Like, I would love to write something about a singer or a dancer, perhaps like a pop star or something, but I feel like it would just work better as a TV show. Not that I have an idea, but anyway, in general, I feel like it's better that you could actually see the dancing or hear the music. And they made the music, which was amazing. But about the book itself, this book had one of the most mature and heartbreaking love triangles I've ever read. And I'm including the infernal devices in that. I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to spoil how anything happens. It was very well done though. And the male protagonist in this is deaf, which also makes it really interesting because he's a guitar player. And the way that they describe him creating music is really interesting. And I found it so adorable how touched he was when the girl started to learn sign language so she could talk to him. Apparently his parents never bothered to learn sign language for their deaf son, which is terrible. I watched the TV show Switched at Birth, and there are a lot of deaf people in that show, and there was a character in that whose parents didn't bother to learn sign language for their son who couldn't hear, and it's just so awful. And I guess that actually happens. It's like, how could you not care about your child? That whole thing aside, this book was so good, and I see why people love Colleen Hoover's books and are so addicted to them, because I just want to read all of them now. And those are the books that I read in May. I am not actually going to do a TBR video for the next couple of months, because a video that I have in the works would be completely spoiled by a TBR. And depending on how things go with the aforementioned planned video, I may also not do wrap-ups, because that would end up being the wrap-up, that video. If I'm able to finish it in 1 month, it might take more than 1 month. We will see. It depends on some other factors that are not very interesting to talk about. What have you been up to in the past month? Let's chat in the comments. Talking to you in the comments always makes my day. I hope everyone is doing well. I know things are pretty insane and stressful right now, and I'm just wishing everyone the best, and I'll see you next time. Bye!